You think of science, and you could couch UFOs within science because it's like empirical inquiry into the natural world as, transcending politics. It's transpolitical. And in fact, it's the most political. It's the most, I mean, if you look at like the UFO world, it's like a just absurd, like sort of infighting. And it's because it's this like kind of religious dogmatic thing for a lot of the people kind of involved. And I think it's unfortunate because I think, it should just be this kind of personal quest ultimately. And it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. Like it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
And fixating on any of this stuff. Like I think the best, and your show is amazing at this too. The best, I think, media in the space is simply expository. It's just like, trying to glean out, the most authentic version of whatever the other person's trying to say. And then peripatetically, trying to approximate truth over the course of many guests. And I don't know if you feel like this, but like maybe since starting Area 52, do you feel like you're a little bit closer to some semblance of truth? And maybe it's a gestalt sense of truth, and it's not like a file you could, give somebody, but do you feel kind of closer to the reality of this subject, or do you feel like it's just as confusing as when you started?
Definitely. I wouldn't say just as confusing. I have more access to more information now, which leads me to having sort of more niche and deeper questions about the subject matter. But all in all, I do feel like the more that I lean into this, the more that I realize that the answers are usually found within. And that seems to be the overarching sort of theme of all of this. Like when you get to the end of nuts and bolts, what are you left with? You're left with consciousness, and you're left with, an ESP. What is that? Oh, we go back to like this quantum field. Oh, we're all one. And so it always comes back to that for me.
Yes.
And I think in that regards, I have learned a lot because it has set me down some like paths where I've, had some self-discovery. And for that, I'm thankful. But in terms of do I feel like I'm closer to, maybe the nuts and bolts side? Hard to say. It feels like it, but that might just be an illusion.
Sure.
Because I have more information, and yet I've still not seen a UFO in front of me with aliens, right?
Yeah,
somehow I feel closer.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, I think often the kind of little known dirty little secret of this space is like most of the people in it have kind of autobiographical reasons for being in it. And one of my favorite quotes is from the Meno dialogues in Plato, and it's all knowledge is recollection. And it actually involves, I think it's like Socrates and Phaedrus, and they're showing that like a slave at the time, because this is ancient Greece, knows how to like draw a triangle, and it's purely primordial knowledge because he's gotten no kind of formal tutoring or whatever. And there's something about this space because you are nobody has the formal education. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
And so there's no kind of, formal credentialed pathway that there's no curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. That you really have to like trust your kind of internal barometer, and you have to trust your instincts. And that's a very important sensor. And I think the way you make the sensor better is actually then by distrusting your instincts. It's this like constant kind of recursive loop of also being like, I could be entirely wrong and down the wrong path.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of mental gymnastic process is healthy for anybody to engage in.
Yeah, definitely healthy, but definitely also tricky if you're not prepared for it, because it could send you down some, dark pathways.
For sure.
I often think that like this, because this whole subject matter is anomalous, right? In terms of what reality is, this is an outlier. It's an anomaly that we're studying, right? Just kind of like if you were doing a science experiment and an anomaly occurred. There's two options there. You can study the anomaly or ignore the anomaly, call it an anomaly because it doesn't fit the model, and move on.
Yeah.
And because we choose to focus on the anomaly, innately cannot dismiss any other anomaly.
Yeah.
And so we're forced to intake these sometimes ludicrous realities and actually try and make them fit somehow. And sometimes we get a piece from them that fits, and then the other part's just completely insane. I've heard stories of Dan Buresh, and that I was like, what are you talking about there, J-Rod?
Yep.
And then I get Danny Sheehan, and he's like, well, there was an alien in S4 and answering questions. And I'm like, God, do I have to go watch J-Rod again? Do I have to? I guess, and does that open the door for Bob again? And like, there's all these, so we have to study these anomalies.
Totally.
And it can kind of drive you a little nutty sometimes.
A little nutty. Well, Dan Barish is a great example because we were with your good friend, my new friend, Luigi, last night. He's making this amazing Project Gravatar. And like, you have to think, right? Like, he has all this amazing evidence that the Bob Lazar stuff, he's probably at Area 51 at S4.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Dan Barish story involves S4, involves Area 51. He gets recruited by Edward Teller to study at Stony Brook. He's this like microscopy expert at UNLV or whatever. And so it has the exact same pattern as the Lazar story. And so I think it's an epistemological paradigm shift studying this stuff. It's not just a scientific paradigm shift. And the reason I say that is because if you look at Francis Bacon and like the advent of science itself, it always involves a priori skepticism. You have to go into an experiment with the null hypothesis. And the null hypothesis is that the experiment is going to show nothing, that it's wrong, that the reality as we know it is correct. And with this topic, and I think actually probably healthier thinking points more towards like Bayesian thought or reasoning, which Danny Sheehan is an expert at and always likes to talk about. He talks about, Thomas Bayes, this English statistician from the 18th century. And that's more like, no, be open to everything.
Yep.
Be open to everything and don't wholesale discount anything, and catalog everything as extremely low probability. And then build corroboration as you see, okay, Bob Lazar, I don't know, I'm not so sure. Dan Barish, wow, it's pattern matches the same way. Oh, Danny Sheehan's telling the story, and he's broken all these other incredibly important American conspiracies. Okay, maybe there's something here. So I think that's actually a healthier way of thinking, but it's not really, you can say it's scientific, but it's not the way most scientists think. In fact,
it takes patience.
Takes a ton of patience.
Yeah, most people get really frustrated in this space when they don't have the answer they're seeking in the amount of time that they've been seeking it. Yeah. Whether that's 30, 40 years or whether that's 1 year, whatever it is, like you can sense people's frustration with, trust me, bro, and all this stuff. And the way that I see it is that like it's all interesting.
Yeah.
True or not.
Yeah.
It makes for an interesting story. It's fun to find those puzzle pieces and sort of, connect them together and be like, oh, that kind of fits if you force it a little bit, it kind of fits in this puzzle. And you go, oh, it kind of looks like something now. And like, that's a fun exercise to do. And I agree. I think it is healthy, but it's hard.
It's hard, but I also think it leads to, and I've probably said this ad nauseum on other podcasts, but it leads to breakthroughs. Anomalies always lead to the next, like the next theory better encapsulates the anomaly than the current theory, whether it's black body radiation before the quantum revolution or, the orbit of Mercury. Like you have so many cases where like you have an effect, you can't turn the effect into math and you can't make it repeatable. It does not mean the effect doesn't exist.
Correct.
You could say it doesn't exist.
It's an anomaly.
It's an anomaly, and that's what a UFO is. And so I'm so excited because I think if you actually like the more historically predictable thing to say is that we are probably going to have some working theory of what UFOs involve in the future. And so it's just epic to try to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's exciting to think which theory that will end up being.
Yes.
Or, will it be a brand new theory or maybe a mashup of all of them? Like, who knows? It's just...
While maintaining humility that theories are the maps and there's some underlying territory and the map is never the territory.
Yeah.
So the theory is never going to be the end of history. And if you think about it, like since Leibniz and Newton, over the last, 400 years, the way we've modeled our reality is vector calculus. And so like everything has to, if it's not turned into vector calculus, it's not real. Parapsychology is not real. UFOs are not real. All these things are not real. And then like, you have a few drinks with like an academic and they're like, well, there's actually like a lot of data around that. We just don't really know how to like make it repeatable or turn it into math. And so that's because of these a priori heuristics that we have around vector calculus or whatever. And maybe in the future, it's like, you have these Wolfram guys where it's like a computational understanding of the universe. Or maybe it's like Plato comes back and it's like we're in the cave and who knows? But they're all just mental models. And it's really hard. It's the problem of the eye seeing the eye. Like it's very hard you can't really audit your own measurement sensor. you know?
Right.
It's like, it's ultimately this like kind of epistemic impasse.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost like to think that it might be something that Douglas Adams would dream up. And it's just like the dolphins are the most intelligent species in the universe, or the second most, and they just leave the planet. Thanks for all the fish. And,
Right.
you know, some silly, you know, thing, because at the end of the day, I mean, even this whole subject matter is kind of silly. I say that a lot. I'm like, this is silly. Look where we're sitting.
We're in a skip.
This is silly and insane. We're playing. We're kind of playing dress up right now, but talking about, you know, some of the most important things in human history.
Right.
But also at the same time, I think levity sort of adds. I don't know. It just makes it palatable.
Totally.
You know, because you can't spend your days in a dark basement surrounded by files and not come out of it, you know, a normal person. You have to be able to add levity, to laugh a little bit at what we're doing, and to, you know, find interesting things, and definitely be like the hard-nosed, you know, I need to figure this out and all this. But at the end of the day, kind of throw it up in the air and be like, yeah, but what if it's also, I don't know, you know, tall bean-looking people? Who cares? It's fun.
And not be overly zealous. Like you and Luigi updated a lot of I kind of thought that the Bob Lazar stuff, well, I still think it might be somewhat of a limited hangout and pushed by the CIA or whatever, but I was unsure that he even worked at Area 51.
Yeah.
And now I'm pretty sure he did, because of you and Luigi. And at that point, it's like the most interesting thing in the world. Okay, so what did he see, and like how much of what he saw was true, and how much of what he worked on was true. And so I think it requires like, you know, at first meeting you, I'm like, this guy's a magician. Like, what is he going to teach me about Bob Lazar? He taught me a whole lot. And you honestly, even in this trip, like, you know so much, and it's a different vector of knowledge often than like what I'm interested in on like sort of the more science nuts and bolts side or whatever. And it's so cool. So yeah, I think it also requires just a lot of humility and kind of a team effort vibe as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And especially, I mean, while we're talking about Bob as well, I think one of the most important factors, and I've said this, you know, when I made the sort of interview with Luigi about Gravator, I'd said this too, but knowing Bob, and I don't feel like I know him at all, but I feel like I've seen sides of him that people haven't seen because of the videos that I was shown and the conversations that I've actually had with Bob. Character, for me, is an important thing. And I'm, like yourself, I think a pretty good judge of it when it comes to, you know, bullshit meter. And I'm sure a lot of people say that. And I know a lot of people say that.
I think you're an extremely good judge of it. And I think it comes from your magic background as well.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And I think that there's certain people who you can look in the eye and, you know, they can tell you something and you go, you know, like, I don't know, like I've had people sat across from me that I don't believe everything they've said, you know, and I'll indulge them, and that's fine. But Bob, I don't know. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I think he's just saying his truth. That's what it seems like. And now this raises the question of, is his truth tampered with?
Right. Exactly.
Right. And the beauty of Bob is that he will say, yeah, it's possible.
Exactly.
You know, and that's why I'm like, this is one of the most important cases, I think, in all of ufology, because point me to another experiencer or another whistleblower who doesn't have their own opinion about what they think is going on.
Yep.
Or who doesn't, you know, expound upon rumors or sit there and try to think of like some scenarios like, oh yeah, well maybe they're doing this, or maybe they're from this planet, or like there's none of that.
Yeah.
There's never speculation with this guy.